Hi there, welcome back. Throughout the course, you need to have a database to work on, because we believe that the best way to learn is by doing. So we highly recommend that you do all the examples along with the course. So you'll have 3 options to get a database. You can choose one of them and do your exercises on it. But please note that it will be enough to have only one of them. All the databases in them will be the same. So one of them will be enough for you to have an up and running database. These options are using a virtual machine, installing database into your local computer, and using Oracle Live SQL. How to get started with these options will be explained in detail in the related videos in the upcoming lectures. But now, I'll mention the key points and the pros and cons of each to guide you on which one to choose. So let's start with the first and recommended one, getting the database using the virtual machine option. For the ones who are unfamiliar with virtual machines, let me explain them in a few sentences. A virtual machine, or in short VM, is an emulated computer system created using software. We can create virtual machines using virtualization software. Actually, virtualization software is a tool that runs virtual machines. Maybe you have heard names like VMware, VirtualBox, Hyper-V, Parallels Desktop, etc. These are some famous virtualization tools. In simple terms, a virtual machine is like a computer inside a computer. So a virtual machine has its own operating system, disk, memory, CPU, etc., but they are all virtual. In this way, the virtualization software runs a virtual machine which has a completely different virtual computer in it. A virtual machine image is a file that has a bootable operating system installed on it. We import it into a virtualization software to create a virtual machine depending on the information inside the image. You will see how to work with them in the following lectures. Great! So this option includes an up and running database and SQL developer with almost no configuration required. We need to download 2 files to proceed with this option. We need to download a virtualization software first, like VMware or Oracle VirtualBox, and then the virtual machine image that Oracle provides for us. We will first install the virtualization software and then import the virtual machine image into it. In this way, you will have a completely running database and pre-configured SQL developer. It is really easy to set up, so you can choose this option confidently. Alright, here are the requirements for this option. It requires 30 GB of free disk space. It can work in all operating systems, but they need to be 64-bit. It doesn't need database configuration and needs only a very small SQL developer configuration. It needs a high-performance computer, requires downloading some files, and needs internet access only when downloading the files. So why should you select this option? Because it's super easy to install and uninstall. It's also easy to work with different operating systems, different virtual machines, etc. It has an up and running database with all the configurations and the necessary data in it. It is easy to reset the database with all its data. This is also important, because sometimes you may change some data that we use in the course. If you make a change to the data, you may have different outputs than us when you execute the same query. And in case you want to do the exercises by watching the videos again, you may need the original data. And it is not easy to manually reset the data. But using virtual machines, you can easily remove the virtual machine and re-import it. In this way, it will be a fresh start for the database and its data. Another reason is if you have a macOS. As you probably know, there is no installation file of the Oracle database for a Mac. But to get around this, we can easily use virtual machines. Another advantage of using virtual machines is you can easily copy your virtual machine to another machine. Since the entire contents of a virtual machine are stored in a few files, you can easily transfer them to another computer and import the VM without any problem. Regardless of which host operating system you originally used, you can copy the OVA file and import it into virtualization software onto another computer. And the last reason, it doesn't need the internet all the time except for downloading it. So when should you not select this option? When your computer does not have at least 30 GB of free disk space, and when your computer does not have at least medium-level computer performance. Actually, lately all the computers have enough performance to run this option. But if you have difficulties working with this option anyway, you can select any other option we showed in this lecture to get a database. The second option for getting a database is installing the database directly onto your computer. For this option, you need to install the database in SQL Developer and perform the database and SQL Developer configurations by yourself. This option tends to have more problems in comparison to the other options, because you're installing a database, not a simple application. Even most of the Fortune companies are using the same database as you install here, so it is normal that it's a bit complex. But in fact, it will be very easy to install it if you follow our instructions carefully. However, some students may have some difficulties with the installation or configuration steps. For example, some students may miss some instructions, and some may have unexpected problems while installing or configuring the database. Or some computers' environments might not be suitable for the database installation due to OS version, disk space, PC username, etc. Actually, if you watch the related installation and configuration videos in this course, you will see that all the steps are explained in great detail. So you're not expected to have any difficulties. But if you have any problems anyway, you can immediately reach us using the discussion board. We'll gladly assist you. So if you have problems with the virtual machine option, you can use this option. Here are the requirements for this option. It requires at least 15 GB of free disk space. It can be installed into Windows or Linux operating systems. It needs database and SQL Developer configurations and needs sufficient computer performance. We need to install the database software and the SQL Developer tool, and it needs the internet only when downloading the related software. So why should you select this option? It requires less disk space compared to the virtual machine option. And it requires less computer performance in comparison to the virtual machine option. So your database tends to work a bit faster than the virtual machine option. But as we will not have a massive database, you will probably not notice the difference. It requires no internet access after downloading the software. So why would you not select this option? Because this option is more likely to cause some difficulties while installing or configuring the database in SQL Developer. Even though most students do not have any problems, some students tend to miss instructions or their computer specs are not adequate. For example, if your operating system is Windows Home Edition or Windows 7 or earlier, you cannot install the Oracle database software because of the software requirements. Or your environment variables might be different, or the default port might be used by another application, etc. In such cases, the way we configure the database in the lectures may not be the same as you should do. So because of these and some other reasons, some students may have some problems completing the installation and configuration. But don't worry, if you want to install the database directly onto your computer and have problems, you can ask us using the Q&A section at any time. We will help you to solve your problems as soon as possible. The second reason is that it requires more configuration in comparison to the other options we provided in this course. The third option is using Oracle Live SQL. Actually, this is the easiest option. With this option, you don't need to download or install anything, because it works on the internet and you can easily sign up and immediately start coding using the latest version of the Oracle database. But with this option, since you will not be able to use a powerful tool like SQL Developer, you will not be able to benefit from its practical features and power. In professional work, we usually use a full-fledged development tool like that. but your code will work without any problems with this option too. There are some minor differences, but I will explain those in the related lectures also. So if you had some problems with the first two options, you can use the Live SQL option. Or if you don't want to do any installation and just want to run the queries, you can use this option. Here are the requirements for this option. As you see, it requires no disk space since it works online. You can use this option in all operating systems and even on your phone or a tablet, etc. You can be online on Live SQL and continue learning anytime and anywhere. It doesn't require any downloads, any configuration, or a high-performing computer. But it needs internet access on a modern browser to use this option. So why should you select this option? It requires no downloads, no installation, no configuration, etc. It works in a web browser, so you can use it anywhere or any machine that you can open up a browser and have internet access. So when should you not select this option? When you need a full-fledged database. Since this is a web-based tool, you shouldn't expect to use a fully featured database development tool like SQL Developer while using it. Also, we'll be using mostly the SQL Developer tool throughout the course. When you need to have full control over the database. In this method, you'll have a user that doesn't have many privileges. Besides, there will be some sample schemas that we will need to use throughout the course. And you will have only read privileges on these schemas. And there are some other restrictions that you should consider. I'll be explaining these Live SQL limitations in future lectures. Since Live SQL runs online, you won't be able to use it if you don't have internet access. And lastly, SQL performance tuning tools are not available to you on Live SQL. Considering all these, I don't recommend that you use this option unless you have problems with the two previous options. But as I've mentioned, this can be really helpful to continue studying even when you are traveling on a bus or just waiting at a place, etc. So basically, anywhere you have some free time to study. So let's come to the main question. Which option should you choose? Actually, it's totally up to you. I've explained the pros and cons of each option. You need to select one of them based on your situation. But I want to remind you again, you only need to select one of them. No need to use many options. So if you still cannot decide which one to use, I recommend that you try to use the virtual machine option first. And if you have problems with this option, you can try the second option, installing the database directly onto your computer. If you have any problems with that one also, you can try the Live SQL option. I'll include the option number at the beginning of the lecture titles. So let's say if you selected option 1, you can skip the lectures prefixed by option 2 and option 3. Alright, in this lecture, I've explained the options in detail to help you choose a way for getting the database. Because some students might get confused about which way to choose. And the option you choose is totally up to you. But you only need one. If you have a problem with one of these options, such problems usually might occur based on the configurations of your computer or insufficient resources or maybe by doing something wrong. But don't worry, if you have any problems with any of these options, you can directly move to another option and try that way. Any option will be sufficient for you to complete the course. But if you still have any problems at all, you can confidently ask your questions on the discussion board. We will gladly answer your questions and solve these problems together as soon as possible. Great! How to do all these options is explained in detail in the related lectures. So now it's your turn to choose one option and set up your database environment and proceed with the course. But if you are still not sure which one to choose, you can watch all the installation videos and then decide which one to choose. So this is the end of this lesson. See you in the next lecture.